This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 325 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's 2-0 win away to VfL Wolfsburg and the much anticipated clash between second and first in the Bundesliga, Dortmund against Bayern. And for all that and more joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, it's lonesome twosome here. How are you doing?
I am doing all right. It's good to be with you here. I'm recording on a Sunday, a little bit something different. So, looking forward to it. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing quite well. I've heard that we are on a time constraint because you will have to be rushed to the hospital after very harsh deficiency of oxygen after laughing at Schalke all morning.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I do have to go to the hospital. It's not for me, but it's Schalke.
Yeah, so in the Rückrundentabelle, they are 17th right now. 9 winless games in a row for the Royal Blues. Obviously not the subject of our podcast, but still funny after that hilarious 3-0 loss against FC Augsburg. So, we need to have this little time to gloat. But anyway, also another good news, this episode is sponsored by the Borussia Dortmund Fan Club London. Thank you very much to the guys and girls from London. And if you also want to sponsor an episode, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information. Anyway, without any further ado, Matthias, Dortmund kept the pressure on Bayern, if you will. The gap still remains 4 points with the 2-0 win in Wolfsburg. I thought it was a very difficult game and a very mature performance, I have to say, from both teams. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, Wolfsburg would have deserved to make my scoreline prediction correct, 2-1. But they didn't deserve to win. I don't think they deserve to get a point out of this, just because at the end of the day, aside from a 10-minute spell-ish in the second half, they didn't do much to really trouble Dortmund defensively or Bürki in goal from an attacking standpoint of creativity and goals. What they did do, and very, very well, which Glasner does very well, is obviously disrupting the build-up play from Dortmund. Very aggressive press, extraordinarily disciplined and good positional play, making so few mistakes and leaving so little room for Dortmund to really play their intricate passes, their off-the-ball movements, obviously adding a level of physicality that we'll talk about to help that as well. What hurt Wolfsburg is when the few times that they had the ball, because I think they only had, 40% possession-ish overall, was when they actually had the ball, they didn't really do much. They lumped the ball forward or played a lot of crosses in to Weghorst and Ginczek, who are, your prototypical quote-unquote big target man striker, but they're not really known to get in behind guys. They're not really going to beat Akanji and so on for pace. And so it seemed like just a lacking of ideas when they had the ball. When they didn't have the ball, they had a lot of ideas, and they did it extremely well, and I will give them credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right with the analysis. I think even Lutz Pfannstiel, the color commentator on Fox, said that, playing both with Daniel Ginczek and Wout Weghorst as your two target men, it's very hard to get in behind the backline, and Dortmund really didn't offer too much either, and I think this is very well reflected in the expected goals. It's 0.6 to 0.8, so Dortmund just edged it slightly, but really goes to show again how efficient this Dortmund team is and how much they're overperforming their expected goals. And again, there were a total of 3 shots on target. Dortmund had 2 and converted both of them. and I think the total of shots was 13. So yeah, not a very eventful game, and Haaland had what I would call his decoy game. He had 0 shots, he had 26 touches, which still would have been a lot for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but it wasn't a game where he could really shine, and I think David Brooks did quite well to nullify him, but just also Dortmund not really targeting him. And you have to say, sometimes Haaland needs a couple of good moments at the very start of the game, and when he doesn't have those, he sort of tries to make up for it and then overcompensates, and then tries to be too spectacular. But anyway, what were your thoughts on Lucien Favre starting the same 11 that beat Schalke?
Well, I mean, it's Favre, so at the end of the day, I wasn't overly shocked. I didn't go into it going, oh my God, how could he not have made any changes? I mean, if Hummels now has an injury that keeps him out of Tuesday, you may go, oh, he should have rested more players. But Hummels was always going to start. We were all in agreement on that on the last episode. So starting the same formation, the same players, I can't really disagree with it. It played the way it had to. It gave certain players a chance then to come on and gain a little bit of fitness and play a little bit of a rhythm. Gio Reyna came on, Sancho came on, Can came on, obviously for the injured Hummels, and I think he played very, very well in that position, I might say, and it played well, of course, with how Wolfsburg played. So, no, I think no issues there. I don't think Erling Haaland's going to be overly tired from that performance. I thought playing, and keeping in mind that Can and maybe Witzel will be back for the Bayern game, possibly. So sticking with Delaney Dahoud makes sense. Then having to bring on Can wasn't necessarily his plan, but I think overall it worked out. I thought Dahoud overall played well, and I listened to the Rasenfunk this last weekend after the match, and somebody mentioned that Dahoud always has this reputation of being really good in training.
Trainingsweltmeister is the word,
exactly.
Right?
Yep, in Gladbach and at Dortmund. And then somehow once the pressure is there, he kind of collapses. Well, the pressure's not there from outside, so I think he suffers a bit from that mental, psychological block of having to performance anxiety in front of, 80,000, or in Wolfsburg case, maybe 15,000 on a good day. No, I kid. It was 30,000, 40,000 maybe they get. That maybe there's that mental block, and he played well. He still has the Dahoud moments. It was the 52nd minute, because I noted it down. He was in an excellent position. Haaland was perfectly positioned. He just had to play a not too difficult pass to Haaland, and he would have been in and probably scored, and instead he completely overhit the pass. He rushed it mentally. You could just see it, and I think that's Dahoud's greatest weakness in those moments, that when it's on, he just doesn't quite do it. But he's doing the job against who, Schalke was just crap, but he did well against the very aggressive pressing from Wolfsburg's side, and so I actually will give Dahoud some credit. He's played well, and I look forward to him continuing to play like that when and if needed.
Mo Dahoud had the second most pressures of the team, 17. Torgan Hazard had 18, and Dahoud was also leading the team in blocks. Obviously, if you pressure a lot, you get to block passes and shots, and he had 5 blocks. Shout out to Thomas Delaney, who was leading the team in interceptions with 5. So Dortmund's double pivot doing actually quite well there. Once again, I think you can really praise Wolfsburg for the defensive effort. I mean, now after this game, they're the tied 4th best defense together with Dortmund on 33 goals against. And the 1-0 that Dortmund scored, I think it preceded like 30 or 40 seconds of possession by Dortmund, just probing Wolfsburg. I mean, we're around the half-hour mark, Dortmund really got very confident with the ball and were shifting around. And it's always nice to see how they then crafted this goal. A bit lucky, I guess, that Haaland completely missed the shot because then Guerreiro had a nice tap in. And yeah, it was a bit shaky after the halftime when Renato Steffen had this one big chance popping up in front of Roman Bürki, but since he scuffed that shot, there wasn't much else coming out of Wolfsburg, and I think Dortmund dealt quite well, especially after having to compensate and readjust. Playing without Mats Hummels, I think that's obviously a big change to your structure and overall build up in ball retention. So well done overall. Had to shithouse a little bit, but I think that's fine. And having then Jadon Sancho as a substitute who can do the things that Jadon Sancho does and set up the second goal for Achraf Hakimi, also nice. And obviously shout out to Rafael Guerreiro for scoring the third goal in 2 games, has now 8 goals and 2 more, and he will be the 4th in double figures. So not bad. Also nice to know that in such a game, basically the 2 wingbacks decided. So I like that Dortmund goals are coming from various different positions right now, which really is a sign of strength. So yeah, very, very happy with that overall. And of course, the one big worry coming out of this game are the Achilles problems with Mats Hummels. But he already said that it's not a concern for the Bayern game. But it's always easy said. Maybe he starts against Bayern, but then has to go off again. You never know. But Emre Can at least showed that he is more than capable of replacing him, but it's always a different thing if you go up against the best attackers of the Bundesliga. So I just hope that Hummels is fine. But it was a very important win. Otherwise, that would have sort of killed the narrative a little bit. And obviously with Leverkusen and Leipzig also in the win column this match day, you have to pick up the points or you'll quickly find yourself in 5th place. And so that really goes to show that the pressure is on from both sides for Dortmund. So no time to rest easy. So Matthias, I think we can talk about Mario Götze, not announcing, but Michael Zorc announcing that Mario Götze won't continue his contract on the next week's episode because we really don't have the time. So let's just move on to the game against Bayern, which is on Tuesday night, and I guess highly anticipated. I will say this on the outset. I said before the Revier Derby that the lack of atmosphere or the lack of fans might actually be a plus for Dortmund in the sense that the expectation and negative pressure that might come from the stands in this particular game is positive for Dortmund, but I think not having your fans backing you against Bayern because the outset is just a little bit different, and Dortmund fans know they're not the favorites in this one, so the atmosphere is a bit more supportive, I guess, is I think the biggest disadvantage you can have in any game in the Bundesliga. So missing the yellow wall and everyone else for the Bayern game is a massive loss. So I don't know how that changes the dynamic, but I really do believe that without the home crowd, Dortmund are dealt a big blow. I don't know how you see it.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say, but I mean, the last few years, Dortmund actually performed very well at home against Bayern, so you could, naturally think that is part of it. Now, that's taken completely out of context when you look at where Bayern was at a given time or Dortmund. I think, obviously, it's the type of match where the crowd can help Dortmund. They can hurt the communication. Granted, they can hurt the communication on the Dortmund side as well, because if you're loud and you can't hear anything, it's the same 22 players on the same pitch dealing with the same conditions. And as such, I think I don't think it's a massive blow for Dortmund to not have it there. I think it was a bigger blow for, say, Union Berlin in that case against Bayern. But it's just both teams are so professional that I think the hindrance isn't so much that it'll necessarily help Dortmund, but the crowd may have hindered Bayern a little bit. But even then, I just don't think Bayern are that affected by crowds anymore at this point with this squad. They're just getting the job done. I think what hurts Dortmund a little bit more is the fact that if you look at the two matches, Dortmund really weren't challenged defensively. Now, you can also say the same thing of Bayern. They had two relatively easy matches. I mean, yes, Frankfurt did score against them. They just ran it down professionally. You can kind of say the same thing of Dortmund. At least Dortmund got challenged a little bit by Wolfsburg in a pressing and aggression sense. So it's Roman Bürki didn't really get pressured. I think Manuel Neuer actually had to do more in the Bayern goal in these two matches than Bürki did.
I mean, he had to pick up the ball out of the net 2 times.
That's true. And I think Bürki only got one save in these two matches.
Target. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's hard to say. So again, I'm not that concerned about the crowd. The one thing I am concerned with, and it kind of goes back to the Wolfsburg match, Piszczek had a lot of heavy touches. And he kind of got away with it against Wolfsburg because, again, their tactic was long ball over the top or cross, and you still had 2 central defenders to mop up. That's not how Bayern are going to play. And a loss of possession in a position like that, if an Alphonso Davies picks it up with his pace and skill, and then the players ahead and around him with their movement, I think there will be significantly more punishment dealt. So Piszczek has to tighten that up a lot because it was pretty sloppy at times against Wolfsburg.
Yeah, I think Alphonso Davies right now is absolutely on fire, and we already saw it in the previous fixture, which Bayern won 4-0. This will be a nightmarish day for Hakimi because Hakimi will not be able to use his pace like he usually does because there's someone who's actually faster than him, which I think really happens this one time in the calendar or 2 times. And Lukas Piszczek obviously does not have the pace either and is easily overrun on that side. So, this is a concern, and there are no perfect solutions there because you can't just tweak the team in a way that you sort of compensate for it. There's just not a perfect solution, so it's just a weakness that Dortmund have and sort of have to deal with, or just need to have some luck that Davis either has a bad game or his passes that are crossed or cut back into the box don't find someone. But knowing how well Bayern actually position themselves in the box and around it, that's obviously always going to be a long day. Bayern right now are the best attack in the Bundesliga with 80 goals. Dortmund are obviously not far behind, and they have the second best defense with 28 goals, just 1 goal of Leipzig. They have the best goal scorer with Robert Lewandowski, obviously, who is on 27 goals right now, which is freaking amazing. Well, not amazing for us, but in general, it's a great effort, and obviously they do also have the best assister right now with Thomas Müller, who is pipping Jadon Sancho with 1 assist at 17 right now. And Lewandowski and Sancho are both tied at 30 goals plus assists. So, it's really a battle of the giants, obviously, in many respective ways. But Bayern Munich obviously do edge Dortmund in a lot of categories. So, the thing is, Dortmund right now, in my book, are obviously the second best team in the Bundesliga. I think Leipzig are a good side and Leverkusen are a good side, but I think that Dortmund still is ahead of them. That being said, I still think there's quite a large gulf between Dortmund and Bayern still. So, I'm trying to be optimistic about this game, but I really am not. I don't know how you feel about it, but if I look at this matchup, this could become a very long day for Dortmund, who obviously this time have the introduction of Erling Haaland, which will hopefully help. But still, it's a very good Bayern team, and since Hansi Flick took over, they have not really lost a step.
No, now they've just lost a step. They've gained like 5. I mean, it shows how good of a coach Hansi Flick is, which a lot of people knew already. I mean, he was kind of the expected successor of Jogi Löw, and I think would have done a good job there, which could still happen. That could be the next step for Hansi Flick after Bayern, and it wouldn't actually shock me. The concerns I have really hinge on a few key positions. It's is Mats Hummels going to play? If Mats Hummels plays, okay, I'm a little bit calmer. If we get a Can Witsel double pivot, I become a bigger step calmer. but that's really where it then stops. Obviously, if Jadon Sancho can play, and I would start him ahead of Torgan Hazard with Brandt in behind Holland, then I think things get really, really interesting because you can attack certain weak points of Bayern. The key thing for me, and I alluded to it with Piszczek, I think it would be a completely different game if Zagadou would be able to play. Because with Zagadou on the left and Akanji on the right, Akanji, the one thing I'm not worried about with him is being beaten for pace very often because he's an extremely fast central defender. We saw that against Bremen where Rashica just barreled against him over and over and over again and just couldn't get past him with his pace. So that would help Hakimi a little bit, but obviously that's not the case. So we deal with that back line that there is, and that's the area of concern that I have, that they're going to have to overcompensate on that side. And then the other side of the pitch and Lewandowski have a little bit more room to work. And that's why I would like to see a Witsel and Can combo, or if Witsel can't go, then Can and Delaney. I wouldn't really want Dahoud in that situation because of those errant passes, and I'd be concerned that he's the type of player that doesn't do that well in the big match, which this is, and I have this flashing image of him missing a golden scoring chance in Munich against Bayern in the Zagadou meltdown match. So that would be a concern of mine. I don't think Dortmund are going to get blown out of the stadium. I think it's very reasonable to think that they're going to lose. It's going to be very hard for me to pick a loss because it's against Bayern, and I just really don't like them that much. But I'm not as nervous. Well, let's just put it this way. I'll let you know how nervous I am before kickoff when I see the lineup.
Yeah, I think that will determine a lot, really. One of the most interesting battles, if we get to see them, it's going to be Emre Can against Joshua Kimmich, because both are players that feed on the emotion, really. And Kimmich is, he has perfected the technique of being angry about nothing. Maybe he is making petty stuff up like Michael Jordan was. I don't know, but he's always really angry, and for some reason that fuels his way of playing football and makes him more successful. And Emre Can, I think, is similar. So there can be some very crunching tackles to be expected. So, if these two face off, I would not be surprised if we see 1, 2, 3, 4 yellow cards or something in this matchup alone. So they could both be sent off. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see whether Thiago can play or not. Against Frankfurt, he had to miss injured, and Goretzka replaced him. Obviously, if you have Thiago and Kimmich, this is a very capable double pivot. And I'm also not entirely sure whether Jerome Boateng will play, because he looked a bit, gingerly at the end of the Frankfurt game when he was subbed off. So. But I mean, they have Lucas Hernandez and Javi Martinez and whatnot to slot in next to David Alaba and probably some capable defender I just forgot. And then with Pavard and Davis on the fullback positions, I think you have more than capable players. And then obviously playing Müller on the number 10 position behind Lewandowski is never a bad idea. Bayern started against Frankfurt with Perisic and Coman, but I definitely expect Serge Gnabry to get a start in this one, and he obviously also knows how to hurt Dortmund, and is a very intelligent, very pacey player. So there's really a lot going to roll at this Dortmund defense. So for Dortmund it really is more than anything, I think, about confidence. This is what Mats Hummels and everyone else talked about the games at the Allianz Arena. I think at the Westfalenstadion it's been a bit different in the past, but obviously you cannot allow yourself to just get pushed into too deep, because then Bayern just play the ball around until they find the gap. And as Dortmund know, they always will. So Dortmund really have to play with courage and press Bayern a lot. And I'm really interested in how Bayern will play with the high line, because if they do that and things are not as crisp in their pressing as they showed against Frankfurt, which I will just not assume will happen against Dortmund, but if it does, then Dortmund obviously have a lot of ways to hurt Bayern. So I'll still say this is Bayern's to lose, but nevertheless it's a very intriguing matchup, because if you have a Jadon Sancho and Torgan Hazard and Julian Brandt and all these players, you know that Dortmund, at least in theory, should be more than capable to really hurt Bayern in ways that other teams just cannot do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are the best team in the Bundesliga, and Dortmund just have to realize that, hopefully not give them too much space and not sit too deep and be too passive, because then I think it'll be at least 3-4 goals.
Yeah, I think overall we will see a lot of goals. So I'm not a betting man, but if I had to pick, I'd say there will be at least 5 goals in this game. I can see like a 3-2 or a 4-2 or something like that along the lines. I really think that defending will not look good on either side, really, because both teams really do have their strengths in attack. And Bayern are obviously very great at regaining possession very quickly. I think they do that very well, but once they do not, they are sometimes in trouble. And they usually play with the very risky positional play, where when it works out, it's super successful. But obviously, when it doesn't, they are exposed. So The job for Erling Haaland really is to get in behind Bayern's backline, but just, someone needs to pass the ball in a way that Manuel Neuer is just too late. And if these two clash and, Neuer gets booked and sent off or something like that, this could be absolutely a key to win. And I think even Manuel Neuer has a habit of getting these things wrong, and especially against Erling Haaland, coming off the line and being the sweeper keeper can go very wrong. So this is something I'm looking forward to, and hope there might be 1 or 2 moments where we'll see that. I think Paco Alcácer had that moment against Manuel Neuer not too long ago, but then missed the open goal. I wouldn't be so sure about Erling Haaland missing. So this is certainly one of the matchups I'm obviously looking for, and Julian Brandt really needs to have a very good game on the ball, and with his passing and his free flowing role, really needs to trouble this Bayern backline, and also really get Joshua Kimmich a little bit angrier, just to rile him up and force him to do something stupid. So these are sort of the key matchups that I'm personally hoping for. Do you have any other key matchups that you're hoping for? We've already discussed that the wing backs might be in trouble, at least on the right side. Rafael Guerreiro probably will have an easier day against Pavard. So any other matchups you foresee?
No, I think we've kind of talked about all of the ones that are going to be key for both sides. If I was Bayern, I would try to stretch the play a little bit. I don't know if that's necessarily something they like to do, but if you would stretch Dortmund given the natural lack of width, and then look back to the inside where you have those quality players, I think that's an area where Dortmund will then massively struggle with or without 3 central defenders. So, I guess maybe that does help. And the advantage that Dortmund have with Haaland is that he's not Weghorst or Ginczek. He has pace, a lot of it. And so that, I think can all play into their hands. But yeah, to me, it's all going to come down to does Hummels play and who is the central pivot, and that for me will determine a win or loss even before the whistle gets blown.
All right, so then do your prediction.
I do agree with you that there could be quite a few goals. It's so hard for me to tip a loss for Dortmund right now. They're playing relatively well, so is Bayern. So how about a very diplomatic and unsatisfying 2-2 draw?
Yeah, that sounds very good. And I think, I feel like this is going to be a loss, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to predict a 3-2 win, but I will do this with an asterisk, just as you said, because if Emre Can and Axel Witsel
Me and Emre, fantastic.
are the double pivot, then I think Dortmund have a real shot at winning this, and then we will really have a title race on our hands. And if that is the case, we will discuss the run-in on the next episode. So that's something to look forward to, I guess, because Bayern still, I think, play Leverkusen and Gladbach, and Dortmund still have to play Leipzig and Hoffenheim. So, a lot of things to look forward to. Anyway, Matthias, I think this very short Sunday, morning show or noon show wraps it up. So please tell our listeners where to find you on the Twitter webs.
You can find me on Twitter at Matthias Hug, and I'm glad I didn't get too much hate for my Weston McKennie trash talk.
Well, I mean, he was subbed off today again, and he was very poor, so you weren't that far off. Maybe the wrong...
Vindication!
Yeah, maybe not the best word, but still, it was utter weak sauce from Weston McKennie yet again. Anyway, you can find me at Stefan Butzko and all of us on Facebook and Twitter at Yellowwallpod. And if you want to read our written content, please, after the game, check out the post-match interviews and whatnot. Theyellowwall.net is the place to go, where you will also find all the ways to subscribe to our show, which is YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and all the other ones, and the RSS feed for your podcatcher is also linked there. So please go ahead, and if you want to be a Patreon and support us financially, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall. Every dollar helps. So thank you everyone out there for listening. Thank you all to our patrons for supporting us, and really hope Dortmund does not let us down against Bayern yet again. So with that, have a good week, and we will be back on Thursday, I guess. So thanks for listening, and goodbye.